What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the finalization of my Surge tournament run. I uploaded 2 games to this channel 2 months ago, and I'm just going to finish out the run in this video here. I asked on Twitter if people liked these little Showdown Draft League movies. People said yes, so we're going to try it out. So I have a couple games. I have the finishing of my, prelims, my presets, and then I have my playoff games that I will show you all. So hopefully you all enjoy. Let me know if it's something that you all like and might want to see more of in the future. But on that note, I'm not really sure what content's going to look like on this channel, if there will be any in the future. I'm definitely not going to be doing anything anywhere close to after when I upload this video. But it's possible I may come back and do one Wi-Fi league. I'm still thinking about it. I don't know if people would still enjoy watching me play Wi-Fi, but if you would, then let me know, I guess. I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I'm on the fence. It would just be for, a 1 league return. So, at least for now. I do think the concept of, I'm retiring is really dumb, because if I have a desire to come back, I'll come back. But it wouldn't be consistent by any means. It would be me just coming back for, a one-off and then kind of disappearing again, because I got a life here. So, yeah. So, yeah, let me know if that would be something interesting. But for the most part, I'm just going to upload this video. Let me know what you think of it. Surge is a really fun tournament, and these are some really fun games. Then maybe I'll see you back for a Wi-Fi league. Maybe not. We'll see. Okay, so just to remind you all of what the Surge format is that it necessitates that every single round you drop a member of your previous team in exchange for new upgraded members to form a new team, and you can only do a certain limited number of transactions every single time. I'm not going to go super in depth into why I did every transaction, etc., etc., but I will just point out what they were. So for this one, I added Bramblegast and Slowbro in exchange for Flapple. I think just Flapple, or maybe one other thing. I don't remember. Either way, Bramblegast and Slowbro are new on the team. So we're playing Simon's, a really good friend of mine, actually someone who visited London just a couple weeks ago, and is a really, really great guy. He has some very scary mons, particularly a Regidrago, which is super scary because I don't have a fairy type. So yeah, I had a Regidrago of my own as well, but I didn't bring it because Hattering is pretty scary. But ultimately, yeah, Regidrago is that huge threat against my team because I just don't have a fairy type. My 1 steel resist is Magnezone, and it's just going to get blown back by a ground type move. In addition, even though I have Slowbro, Floatzel is still really strong against my team because if he can whittle down Slowbro or, maybe play around with a special set or something like that, he has a lot of ways that he can threaten me. So the strategy this game is pretty interesting, and I'm going to show it right here. We're using screens to kind of try and hold back, or just a screen to hold back against some of the damage that Regidrago can do, because I think it's more likely to come special. We're also trying to use Zoroark to our advantage as well, because he doesn't really like switching into dark type moves, particularly knockoff. We have Bramblegast here, which is really funny because in concept, Bramblegast should be able to hardwall Pelipper with the ability Wind Rider, but I actually didn't know that ability stopped Hurricane at the time, so I just went Infiltrator for no reason because I was like, this seems kind of useless. But unfortunately, I could have used Bramblegast as a way to beat Pelipper, but I didn't know that it could be immune to Hurricane at the time, so we're not doing that this time. We have a worse Bramblegast on this team. And then the mon that I was in concept building around to try and win with was this sort of utility umbrella, nasty plot, almost double dance, I guess, Uxie, which with Psychic and Shadow Ball, since he doesn't have a dark type, I think he had a Croc Rock that he didn't bring, but he doesn't have a ground type for the most part. Psychic plus Shadow Ball should be hitting his team pretty strong, so if I can just get up 1 Calm Minded, then a Nasty Plot be at +3/+1, the idea is that I can start breaking through some of these fatter things. So that's kind of the idea that we have in mind, but the big thing to point out is Copycat GRAFAIAI. This is kind of my idea in how I can potentially deal with the Regidrago. I've mentioned special attack investment even though I don't have special attack, because if it goes for something like Dragon Energy or Draco Meteor, I could come in with GRAFAIAI, copycat it, and do super effective damage to KO Regidrago. Alternatively, it still is pretty good with copycat, because if I Gunk Shot once, and I use Prankster Copycat after that, Gunk Shot becomes that priority that it gets, because it is always the last move used. So say I KO Pelipper with Gunk Shot, he can't revenge me with Floatzel because I'm going to Copycat Gunk Shot it and outspeed it even if it's under rain. So that was the idea behind Copycat GRAFAIAI, and I've really wanted to show that GRAFAIAI is a really broken mon, so I'm hoping that this game I can do it. So let's get into the game and show what happens. This happened 2 months ago from when I'm recording this, so if I'm a little rusty on what happens, just bear with me. But we do have the lead against Pelipper and Uxie. I wanted to kind of just see what the heck this was, but this was a Sash lead. This is actually a Zoroark. So the idea behind this is that if it outspeeds, I know it's Scarf, and U-turns, but knockoff, just knocking off one thing for free immediately is really nice. So because U-turn comes off here and it, you know, reveals to be faster, I know that this thing is Scarf, which is going to be super important for the rest of the game because it gives me crucial information on how I play around this thing. And I can go for knockoff here and just knock off whatever this Chestnut's item is. It's an Akaberry, and I can U-turn from here to get just more chip off on the Chestnut and go into Bramblegast. Bramblegast, since there's no Ghost type, can freely spin here, and Chestnut really can't do anything to it. So I can go for Rapid Spin, as he, I believe, is going to go for just Wood Hammer to get some chip off, but he's going to see that it doesn't really do much because I can just go for Strength Sap. Now, he actually does a pretty good play here, and bounces back the Strength Sap, which I didn't fully realize that's how it worked, but that's how it works. For some reason I thought it stopped the attack drop, but the move still went off, but I mean, it's Magic Bounce, so that makes sense. So he effectively blocks by healing, which is a really good play. And then from here, I'm just going to go for Power Up to get some damage off. I really wanted to get some chip off on this Hatterene because it opened up Uxie as an actual win con. But ultimately he just goes into the Pelipper. Now, hilariously, he also forgets about Wind Rider because we're both relatively new to Gen 9. So he clicks Hurricane, even though I could have just straight up been immune. But either way, I'm going to make a double here to Magnezone because I think that the switch to Hatterene is obvious, and if it's not Hatterene, then it is going to be something along the lines of like Revavroom or Regidrago, and I want to make sure that I have a, you know, good mon in front instead of the Slowbro. So I make a strategic double there that ends up paying off, and now because I could just go for Volt Switch, I'm absolutely fine. Now Volt Switch did a shit ton. I know I'm pretty sure I'm analytic, but like, Jesus, I'm not even specs effective. Volt Switch did 34 and a resisted hit is pretty nuts. So I go right into my Uxie. This is definitely my Uxie's. He's gonna go for Toxic, which is super annoying because it just puts me on a timer and it doesn't allow me to be as bulky as I would have liked. So as he reveals Haze here, it becomes clear that this Uxie is not doing what I wanted it to do. I mean, it's not necessarily going to break this team as much as I thought. As he goes for Bulldoze here, predicting my switch out into Magnezone, all of a sudden things are getting really bad for me because this is like my one answer to Regidrago, and now it's even weaker. So I'm able to go for Volt Switch and get some chip off, but he's managed to you know, Toxic my Uxie and weaken my Magnezone to the extent that I really feel like I cannot beat this Regidrago absent the Copycat tech. So I need to make sure I'm really preserving GRAFAIAI for that. Thankfully, he ends up going into Hatterene here, which allows me to get a bunch of damage off with this Zoroark and click U-turn and just kind of pivot around, and that is going to open up some of my other defensive mons to just come in and get a free hit off. Like Magnezone can come in as a free sack here, and that is going to allow me to get in Bramblegast here. And Bramblegast, since there's no Ghost immunity, forces a KO, hilariously. He can go into Regidrago, but he would be losing the damage on Regidrago, meaning that Dragon Energy isn't as strong. So I go for Phantom Force, basically forcing KO or risking his Dragon Energy to be lower. He goes into Pelipper, which again, if I just was fucking Wind Rider, I'd be fine. But I end up going into Uxie here, knowing that I can take 2 hits and at least threaten with some damage. So by going for Psychic, I'm just threatening this Revavroom a little bit more, putting it in range of GRAFAIAI's knockoff, which is really important. Because, yeah, you know, I would like to KO it. I do end up going into fucking Brambleghast. Zoroark trips me up too. Zoroark to revenge the River because Brambleghast obviously can't do it. And what this is going to force is an endgame situation where he's pretty much forced to rely on the rain. I mean, Regidrago's in the back, but in order to sort of speedily outspeed my Zoroark, he's going to want to rely on this Floatzel and Scarf Pelipper to do it. So I'm going to go into Brambleghast, sack the Brambleghast with the Hurricane to the amazement of the chat, who was like, why aren't you Windrider? And I straight up had no idea. I'm going to go into Slowbro here, and what Slowbro is going to allow me to do is it's going to allow me to force in Regidrago, and that's huge because I want Regidrago in, because I want to be able to KO this Regidrago, because once I KO this Regidrago, I can pretty much clean this up with GRAFAIAI. He's going to for Draco Meteor here, and I'm going to GRAFAIAI, and I have an issue here. I can either click Gunk Shot and risk that this thing doesn't have much bulk and try and go for the KO with Gunk Shot, or I can click Draco Meteor. The issue is if I click Draco Meteor, I'll kill here. When I say Draco Meteor, I mean click Copycat into Draco Meteor. But he'll be able to go into Pelipper, and then I'll have to go into Zoroark and sack it off and then go back into this thing, and I won't live a hit from Floatzel or Pelipper, and I won't be able to click Copycat. So I have to go for the Gunk Shot to land and KO here, and I click it, and it does. Luckily for me, he doesn't have very much bulk on his Regidrago, and Gunk Shot is going to be able to pick up the KO, and to his surprise, I'm going to be able to click Copycat and outspeed the Scarf Pelipper and KO with Gunk Shot, and then I'm also going to be able to click Copycat and KO the Floatzel with Copycat Gunk Shot, despite it being Swift Swim, which means that GRAFAIAI is going to be able to come through and claim 3 KOs this game, I think, in the end game to get a little late game sweep off, bypassing some of the speed issues that I was having in this matchup by using Copycat Prankster to my advantage, and it ends up working out here. I ended up sort of bypassing what was a really bad matchup against a Regidrago without a Fairy type by using some creative strategies and trying to play a little bit more fast-paced with things like Zoroark and GRAFAIAI. Even Brambleghast was pretty effective here. So some things didn't work, like the Uxie and the Magnezone ultimately just got a couple Volt Switches off. It claimed a few KOs, but realistically the stars of the show were the Zoroark and the GRAFAIAI, and yeah, I didn't even have to click screens, which was nice. That's how sort of fast-paced I was playing. Lesson learned on the Windrider, but hey, whatever. Okay, so for round 4, we are taking on Bruno, which is really exciting because he was a CGT semifinalist, and we never actually got to play during the course of the season. Vepsis took him out in semifinals, so we never got the opportunity to fight, and now we get the opportunity to fight in Surge, so that's really exciting. We were both 3-0 headed into this matchup because you play someone with the same record as you. So yeah, that was really nice. Now, Bruno had the opposite problem that I had against Simon, or had the same problem that I had against Simon, but now I'm on the opposite side of the problem, which is that he doesn't have a Fairy type into my Regidrago. So I think this matchup's really, really good for me. I think as long as I can break a lot with Regidrago, I can clean up nicely with some of my other mons. Now, as you notice, I have Salamence on this team. I added Salamence to kind of boost up the Dragon spam, completely not knowing that I was going to face a team without a Fairy type. So that was very convenient for me to have 2 really, really strong Fairies. I just wanted Salamence as a mon that was a ground resist, or ground immunity rather, because I felt as though I did not have a mon like that. I didn't have removal, so I liked the idea of having defog or something like that. Ultimately, it was the ground immunity, though. I wanted to make sure I had a ground immunity. I wanted to make sure I had something with a little bit of reliable recovery. And, you know, the idea of the team was Dragmag, right? So I wanted to beef up the dragon types that I had. I wanted to have multiple dragon types. So adding Salamence did that for me. As you could tell, his only dragon resist is the Scizor, so we're going to build around that. I ultimately ended up, instead of going for a, like, I mean, this is an offensive Salamence, but it's not a setup Salamence. We're going for Assault Vest Salamence. And the reason we do that is because I liked it into things like Zoroark, into things like Raichu, into his special attackers where I could take a hit and guaranteed KO back. So this is the type of mon where, because I know I'm taking 1 or 2 mons off early and I'm going to be off to an early lead thanks to Regidrago, since Salamence can kind of just trade 1 for 1, it's gonna keep me up in that advantage state, which I like. So that's pretty cool. Weakness policy, Trick Room Slowbro, I thought was a good win condition for me here. Ultimately, Surf plus Psychic, he doesn't have a great resist to. The only thing that he really takes it with is the Vaporeon. And I didn't think that Vaporeon could afford Haze here. because it needs Ice Beam, it needs Surf, and you know, it wants the Wish, it wants to Protect. It could run like Haze, but ultimately, I'm not sure. I think it could run like just offensive with Shadow Ball for Slowbro instead. Either way, even if I Trick Room into a Calm Mind once, that allows me to sort of set up on the Raichu as well. So if I Trick Room and Raichu comes in, I can click Calm Mind, take a T-Bolt, and then KO back with Surf after the Weakness Policy boost. Ultimately, I think I just had a lot of options with this thing that made this a good late game cleaner. Scarf Magnezone just gives me some added speed on this. It allows me to outspeed the Hisuian Zoroark, which my Zoroark doesn't naturally outspeed. It also allows me to outspeed the Raichu with things like Body Press. Even though I can't really touch it for anything, you know, stronger than that, it's still nice to have that revenging option. This is the mon that I wanted to just break really early with. I wanted to click either Outrage or Dragon Energy. Dragon Energy is there because I can click it the first time and then click Outrage against something like Vaporeon. And then if Scissor comes in, Scissor doesn't have the power to KO me outright. So even if I'm locked into Outrage, I can click Outrage and then I click Fire Fang right after and hopefully not get hit in Confusion. With the Yachi Berry, it just ensures my longevity with things like Ice Beam on Vaporeon. So that's really nice. I think there was some other ice move that he had that he didn't bring, but I don't remember. But ultimately, Outrage, Fire Fang, so I'm clicking a lot. Sleep Talk was for like Breloom Spore. Other than that, just pretty strong on. Sash Zoroark again offers me potential lead options. It also offers me just another knockoff mon, similar strategy to before, and then the Safety Goggles Uxie is just the Breloom answer, is basically the idea. So let's get into the game. This is what I remember the least, so we'll see how it goes. Leading Mence and a Breloom. Just kidding, it's a Zoroark, but he doesn't know that. Except for that he does, because he's not afraid of the dual wing beat. And it's also not a Breloom either, it's a fucking Zoroark on his end too. So we both had the same idea. I wish I had knocked off, but you know what? As someone who doesn't really good, as someone who's not very good at Zoroark, to have both the Zoroarks revealed turn one, I'd say that works out pretty well for me. So he's going to go into Vaporeon on my Sucker Punch, trying to outgame the Zoroark and get myself in an advantageous position early on. Good play on his part, but I will say this does allow me to get a big knockoff off, which is going to put Vaporeon, one of his bulkier mons on his team that can tank hits for my two Dragon types. It's going to make it pretty low, and it's going to make it very difficult for it to take these hits. So I'm going to go into Ready Drago. I'm just going to start clicking Dragon type moves, starting with Dragon Energy, but then he's not going to know that, like, I mean, yeah, sure, I'm, you know, Dragon Energy, but I'm also Max Attack Outrage, so I have the ability to click that later on, but ultimately just Dragon Energy in itself is going to be good. He's going to click Bullet Punch. I'm going to start clicking Fire Fang. He's going to reveal to be Aqua Berry. We just have Resist Berries everywhere. And now he's going to go into Vaporeon. Now, if I was just Dragon Energy, I wouldn't be able to KO here, but thankfully I do have the move Outrage, so I will be fine to just click that, KO outright, and my plan's pretty much working, which is just claim as many mons, as much damage as humanly possible with Ready Drago early on, because I'm so bulky, it's just not possible for him to get all of that damage off on me. Now, he didn't even KO there if he wasn't Life Orb, so him being Life Orb is great for me, because now I can go into Uxie, set up my rocks to eliminate any Focus Sash Raichu stopping me, and from there I can click, I believe I click Psychic here to claim the KO. Yep, and yeah, I mean, from here it's kind of a wrap. I mean, it's pretty early to say it, but with Scarf Magnezone, I'm always sort of guaranteeing a KO with Flash Cannon here, even though Raichu's a resist. I mean, it's not going to take an analytic boosted Flash Cannon. I could just keep clicking Flash Cannon here until I'm dead. Don't really care about him nasty plotting too much, because I can sack Slowbro, so unfortunately the win con is not the win con. And I can then go into Salamence this next turn, and this is why I had that Assault Vest option, because I knew that Nasty Plot Raichu had a potential to be a thing if it got in against the Scarf Magnezone. So even if he went for Nasty Plot on the Slowbro, he would have needed crit to KO me, because I believe I took any hit from +3 Raichu. I'm just going to be able to click Outrage. He will go into Hisuian Zoroark. He could click Icy Wind if he has it, but he ultimately doesn't. He just clicks Shadow Ball. Because I'm AV, I take that very easily, and I'm going to click Outrage. Now, I dropped Salamence after this game just because I kind of didn't want to use it anymore. It seemed kind of boring, but like ultimately it was nice to try it at least once, and I had a good fun time. In terms of this game, though, I think I could have played it a lot better. It was a lot closer than it should have been for a matchup where I had a Regidrago and he had no fucking fairy type. But, you know, we'll take it. So we're 4-0, and there's only 3 other people who are 4-0 in the tournament at this point. It's me, it's Vepsis, it's Rockyrolo, and it's Martin, aka Lischus. And I didn't want to play Vepsis because we played like 900 times. I wanted to play Martin, aka Lischus, because we've been in a couple leagues together and haven't played, but instead we got Rockyrolo, aka Rob, who has been on a tear, an absolute tear, the entire tournament. So I'm excited to show you how this game went. Okay, so if you look at Rob's team, it doesn't look particularly threatening. He has a lot of like goofy mons like Screamtail and Overquill and Bramblegast, but he is an incredibly creative and unpredictable builder. And he has been dominating throughout this entire tournament, taking huge wins off of players like Marcus, other players, I believe, like Lucas 2543, who's a pretty good player. And I think he had a couple other great wins. I mean, I don't think I think every single game he played was dominant, and he was the 4-0 player coming in with by far the highest differential. So, and I was coming in with the lowest differential, so it was pretty scary. But the mon that I ended up picking up this round was Hisuian Lilligant, which was pretty exciting. I wanted to use Hisuian Lilligant for a while. It looks like the Hisuian mon that I was like pretty interested in, with the ability to like victory dance and do little things like that. I also really enjoy playing really risky in Surge because like it's my own tournament. I don't necessarily want to win my own tournament, so I like playing with a little bit more riskier strats. If they work, they work. If they don't, that's okay. So I definitely wanted to try the Lilligant. I also picked up Donphan because looking at the 3 matchups I had, I didn't want to be without removal. And it turns out Salamence I don't think actually gets defog this generation. So I wanted to make sure that I had removal on Donphan. Apparently Hisuian Lilligant also gets defog, so we have 2 forms of removal here, but ultimately I did want that removal because, you know, you look at his team. He has rocks on 2 of his potential mons, he has spikes on 2 of his potential mons, he has toxic spikes on 1 mon. Same went for the other opponents that I had, so I wanted to make sure I had removal for this round and just also upgrade my ground type. I had been having ground type camera up to this entire time, and I just wasn't bringing it because it wasn't very good, so I wanted to make sure that I upgraded my ground type into something a little bit more reliable. So that's why we have Donphan. The rest is the same. We still have like Uxie and Slowbro, but they both stayed on the bench for this game. So yeah. So this is what we brought. Bloop, bloop, bloop. We have a clear amulet Hisuian Lilligant because close combat Leaf Blade Ice Spinner hits his entire team and doesn't get intimidated by the Overquill with the clear amulet, which is nice. Now he had an Azumarill and could have brought the Azumarill, and I would have lost to a Sap Sipper variant, but I kind of just played off the assumption that he wasn't it or that I would break it some other way. So yeah, I was kind of just like, Sap Sipper Azumarill won't come, which is a very dangerous assumption to make when you're dealing with Rob, who's incredibly good with niche sets like that, but it was a gamble that paid off in this instance. I had Encore Donphan, which is a new tech that I got this generation that I was really excited about, and what that does is it stops things like Calm Mind, you know, Screamtail or other forms of setup, and it gives me momentum where Donphan loses it, because if something's healing or clicking a certain move in front of Donphan, I can click Encore, and that allows me to get a safer pivot knowing what, you know, they're going to go for next. And Earthquake knockoff hits pretty much everything with the exception of Hippo, and there's nothing I really could have that hits Hippo, so that's nice. So this is the rocker. It's very Spadef. It wants to take hits from Screamtail, it wants to take hits from Meloetta, it wants to take hits from Magnezone, all the above. Regidrago this week is very interesting because he had 2 fairy types, and I very well could not have brought it, but I liked its ability to bait out the fairy types, click screens, and click explosion, which gives more credence to things like this Hisuian Lilligant and this Zoroark as well, the Scarf Zoroark, which could click and lock into a dark move. A lot of the things stopping those 2 things were, like I said, the Sap Sipper Azumarill, the Screamtail. If I can bait those out forcefully with Regidrago, click my screens, click explosion, I have a bit of a better odds to, you know, beat the fairies with these other 2 mons. Magnezone, hello. Magnezone's interesting here because he has his own Magnezone, but ultimately I kind of just want to click a Specs button. Specs Flash Cannon, pretty strong here outside of his own Magnezone. I could have tried some kind of body press set, but I kind of just wanted to click a really strong button, and that was pretty much the gist of it. Scarf Zoroark allows me to spam dark moves. The thing that, you know, will take that is the Overquill, but I want Overquill weakened for Hisuian Lilligant to go off. I also want Overquill weakened for GRAFAIAI to potentially go off. GRAFAIAI doesn't have a great way to hit the Hisuian Lilligant, but we're trying Copycat again this week, and hopefully that can pay off. It has a little bit less utility this game. It's not like I'm facing rain or anything, but it was a nice sort of like just in case move where if I click it and then he tries to revenge me, if I click Gunk Shot to KO something and he tries to revenge me with the Scream Tail, which is actually faster than the GRAFAIAI, believe it or not, that I can Copycat Gunk Shot the Scream Tail. In addition, Pyapa Berry allows me to take a Psychic Fangs from it. It also allows me to take 1 hit from Meloetta, so a couple good options there. So yeah, let's see how the game against Rob goes. So he leads Meloetta, I lead the actual Magnezone. I promise this isn't a fake Zoroark lead this time. And what I really like about this is that he didn't go Magnezone, so I'm about to get a fat hit off, and that's going to be a fat Specs Analytic Volt Switch, which gets a crit here, as I get pretty lucky. And I'm going to get to go into Donphan. He's going to go into Bramblegast, set up a Spike as I'm going to go for Rocks. Now he could easily spin, he could Strength Sap. I'm just going to Encore it knowing it's going to be one of those 2 options. And now that's going to give me either a free switch or it's going to allow me to click knock pretty freely just to get rid of the item. I ultimately decide to go for the knockoff because if he switches and tries to pull a double, then I'm going to get something out of that turn. And here it's kind of like a situation where we can't do anything. I mean, he can get rocks up. I don't expect him to Earthquake, so here I'm able to just go into Magnezone again and force more damage. I could be bold and click Volt Switch, but ultimately I think Steel Beam makes a lot of sense because it just weakens this Magnezone for me. Now unfortunately he is going to outspeed me because he has speed and I don't, but getting this amount of damage off my Magnezone is really nice for Zoroark to guarantee KO it, as well as GRAFAIAI with low kick. So he is going to Magnet Rise here, which is great tech, but I'm going to predict that he has Magnet Rise and click knockoff to get rid of its item. He's going to body press. I'm going to Encore it just to make sure that he can't rest or do anything weird like that, as I'm just going to start spamming knockoff at this point. And what that's basically going to be is a trade between Donphan and Magnezone. And even though I don't necessarily think Magnezone is the biggest threat to my team, it's nice to just have it out of the way. And whatever he does to revenge me here is going to give me momentum. And what I really like about this exchange is he's giving me this to Earthquake, except he's like a really fast hippo for some reason, so that's really funny. So since Azu didn't come, Regidrago looks pretty good here, but he is keeping Screamtail in back because I do bring the Regidrago. I want to weaken this a lot because I look at this and I sort of see, okay, if I get a Victory Dance up, I kind of just win so long as Screamtail is shipped. So if I can force Screamtail in and click Explosion, everything's pretty much in range of a +1 CC for Overquill, Leaf Blade for Hippowdon, Ice Spinner for Bramblegast. So that's kind of the idea behind bringing this in here. I'm going to click Reflect. It's going to do 16%. And now I'm in a situation where if he's staying in with this, I'll click Dragon Pulse and weaken Hippowdon, but he does end up going Screamtail. And I know for a fact that he can't KO me here, so I'm just going to click Light Screen, knowing that I can take a hit, and then he's going to Calm Mind again. I'm going to click Explosion because I don't want to deal with this thing. And now I get to go into Zoroark. This is definitely Zoroark, I'm pretty sure. So, or no, I go into GRAFAIAI. This is GRAFAIAI, I'm pretty sure. I could be Scarf. I was Pyapa, so I did take the Calm Mind Psychic behind the screen, so that's why I did go into GRAFAIAI. Forgot about that. And I'm forced to click Gunk Shot here. I don't have a choice. So that makes sense. I click U-turn, and from there I get to go into Zoroark. This is Zoroark, I'm pretty sure. And I don't have a great way to hit this. He doesn't know that. So I'm just gonna click Night Days as he goes into Screamtail. This is perfect for me because you know, this was a stop to Hisuian Lilligant. After this dies, Hisuian Lilligant outspeeds everything. And this is going to be like a weird interaction here where I miss the Night Daze, then I land the Night Daze, and he gets the accuracy drop and miss the Dazzling Gleam. So in effect, this basically just ends up being me hitting it twice, except for the fact that he switches out. So it does change like the game state a little bit, but not very much. He's going to go for Aqua Jet here to try and pick me off with what I learned later was a Banded Overquill. And then go into Hippowdon here. Get the sand up. As I'm in a Night Daze, he's going to recover, I think, just to KO me with the sand. And now I'm in a situation where I need to start landing some Hustle Leaf Blades. I could go for Victory Dance here, but ultimately I think it just makes sense for me to click buttons, because if I go for Victory Dance and I don't know, maybe I should have gone for Victory Dance. I have no idea. Fair point. Why didn't I go for Victory Dance? Maybe I didn't KO with this? I'm not entirely sure, to be honest with you. So maybe I should have. Either way, go for what's in front of me. Scream Tail's going to come out. Now here, I have to switch into GRAFAIAI. I hope I live a Psychic type move. He doesn't even have a Psychic type move and is able to click Flamethrower. And I'm going to be able to copycat that Flamethrower to KO the Scream Tail. And this puts me in a situation where actually, hilariously enough, GRAFAIAI will go down to the Hippowdon after getting just a little bit of chip. But Lilligant will be able to come in and clean up the game with a Leaf Blade so long as I don't miss. Now, I've landed like 3 hits so far this game, so it's likely I could miss this one. It's entirely likely. I'm going to click Leaf Blade and I'm going to land it. So we end up taking down Rob, the person who has been absolutely tearing his way through this tournament and finishing the presets 5-0. The only other person to do that was Vepsis. So Vepsis and I were the top 2 seeds. He was seed number 1, I was seed number 2. And Vepsis lost immediately round 1 of playoffs. He lost to Jack, who is seed 32. So there was a lot of pressure on me not to lose immediately in playoffs. But historically, people who have gone undefeated in the presets of Surge have actually never won. So we'll see how it goes. It's a bit of bad luck. But we're gonna give it a shot, and we're gonna try and do well in playoffs. So I will show you the playoff games. So my first playoff game is against Shayquaza, who is a pretty scary opponent. I have a history of doing pretty not so great against him when I was first playing Mons, and then I started kind of figuring out how to win. But ultimately, I'm pretty sure he still has my number in games. So definitely a scary opponent to have to take on round 1 of playoffs when you're seeded so highly, especially. So he made some terrifying trades. He has a Hisuian Samurott, which arguably was the most under-tiered Mon over the course of this season. It was allowed since the very beginning, but very well should have been a 12 or 13 pointer with the ceaseless move edge that's that spike. So that's really scary. But the 2 trades that he made during transactions were Goldango and Hoopa. Very correctly identifying a glaring weakness to Ghost and Dark against my team in general. And what I ended up picking up were Ursaluna and Tinkaton. Ursaluna I was really excited for because I thought it looked really good for my team. It allowed me to upgrade Donphan into a Mon that I liked a little bit more. Wanted to try, just new Mon. And it also took care of my sort of Ghost weakness that was just Zorak as my only resist. And then Tinkaton gave me Rocks. It gave me a Fairy type because there were a lot of Regidragos still floating around. There were a lot of just other dragon types floating around, a lot of good dark types floating around, so I wanted to make sure I had a good dark resist as well. That wasn't just Hisuian Lilligant. So Tinkaton gives me some of that bulk as well. So yeah, against a scary team like this, let's see what I end up bringing. I brought a physically defensive Flame Orb Guts Ursaluna. I wanted to be able to take hits from Mimikyu like it was nothing, like Drain Punch is doing like 20%. I wanted to make sure that I was taking close combats from Zapdos. I wanted to make sure I was taking physical hits from, Samurott Hisui, and be able to KO back whenever I wanted to. And I really didn't need much more attack than just a little bit, like 4, because Flame Orb Facade or Flame Orb Headlong Rush in itself is just disgusting. Choice Banded Lilligant here was pretty good. He had a lot of really strong Lilligant answers, like Goldango and even the Zapdos. But ultimately, I figured the way to break through that was not to not bring Lilligant. It was instead to kind of just spam them and force them out and pressure them more. So Choice Banded Lilligant essentially forces things like Goldango out. It forces things like Zapdos out. And I have Leaf Blade, Leaf Blade does like 40% to Goldengo. That's pretty cool. But Bullet Seed, if I get lucky and land 5, I mean, that's 125 base Power Grass move versus a 91. So I liked the idea of having Bullet Seed too, where in a pinch I could just click a move. And like, if I got all 5 hits, it was to a KOing Goldengo. So, I mean, I really just need Leaf Blade Ice Spinner. I have nothing for Goldengo. This gets absolutely nothing at all for Goldengo. So, I figured my best way to do it is just power through it as much as possible. Ironically, the best move that Hisuian Lilligant has for Goldengo is Bullet Seed. So, we'll see. And then Healing Wish was just there to try and Healing Wish, you know, Ursaluna back up or whatever I need. Scarf Magnezone looks really good here because it just can Volt Switch very freely. I believe he had a ground type, but I believe it was really bad, and he didn't even bring it. So that helps being able to revenge things like the Hisuian Samurott, the Goldengo, the Glimmora, the Mimikyu, all get revenged by this Scarf Magnezone, so that's really great. Assault Vest Tinkaton is a really strong lead here. In that it just doesn't get KO'd by anything, and it anti-leads things like Sash, Hisuian Samurott if I can Fake Out. In addition, with Mold Breaker, if I Fake Out into Gigaton Hammer, I believe Glimmora's Toxic Debris doesn't go off, so it was just a really strong lead option that was never going to be KO'd by anything. Rocky Helmet Uxie is just, it's the answer to the Zapdos, and then Specs Zoroark. Dark Pulse doesn't really have a switch-in besides Hisuian Samurott and Zapdos. Those aren't really defensive switch-ins, so I wanted to kind of just pressure them. Hilarious thing about this team, I don't have a single non-attacking move on this team. Every single mon on this team is full of 4 attacking moves, so that's pretty fun. So let's get into the game. So he leads Hoopa, which is a little surprising. I thought it would be the Glimmora or even the Samurott to get hazards up right away, but it wasn't. But I didn't hate this because I could Fake Out, just to get a little immediate chip off, and now I could force it out. Him staying in was pretty surprising, but I was just able to Gigaton Hammer and KO the Hoopa Unbound right a fucking way, so that's pretty freaking nice. I'm going to go into Uxie on the close combat from the Zapdos. This is a very free U-turn this time around, but I actually clicked Future Sight, which I think was a mistake. I don't think Future Sight's getting me a ton of places, but at the very least what it does is it gets a little bit of additional chip. But I think U-turn is probably the better play in hindsight. He's going to go for Ceaseless Edge here. I have no way to remove these hazards, so it's just a question of clicking Fake Out, trying to get a little extra chip off, and going from there. I click Play Rough. Unfortunately, Naba on the KO because he has a lot of defense investment, but now I can click, I believe, Gigaton Hammer, or Knock Off, and KO this thing back. So it puts me in a 6-4 advantage. That's great. I can go into Uxie here and preserve the Tinkaton because it does still outspeed Goldengo, which is nice, as well as Glimmora, and Uxie is just going to be there to, you know, make Zapdos take some chips. So this is an incredibly free T-Bolt here. There's just no resist. It's incredibly strong. And as much as it looks like I'm dominating here, this Scarf Zapdos, after clicking Close Combat, is horrifying. I don't have a fighting resist anymore. I let Uxie go a little bit too early, so I'm able to threaten it out by, you know, the Fake Out, but he can switch into Goldengo and stop that, or Mimikyu, and I can only do that once because the spikes are up, right? So I need to keep Ursaluna alive because I know that I take 1 CC, so I need to essentially put myself in a position where I'm in an endgame where his last mon is Zapdos clicking CC, and I still have a full health Ursaluna. That's my win condition because everything else is just going to drop to a CC. I'm going to click Fake Out here. Thankfully, with this being Air Balloon, I know I outspeed it, so I can KO its Air Balloon. Not that it really matters too much because I think I still had Fire Punch on Ursaluna. But I can't let Ursaluna come in, so this is a situation where I can just bring in Zoroark, click Dark Pulse, and he's going to go into Mimikyu. I'm going to break the Disguise. He could Swords Dance, but ultimately it would just be risking more damage. Drain Punch is going to come off, and now I'm in a situation where I can go into my Hisuian Lilligant and click Leaf Blade, hoping that I land, which I do. Still haven't missed a Leaf Blade with Hustle this season. He's Scarf Close Combat, and now I think he thinks he has the game locked up, but unfortunately he doesn't know that I'm max HP, max defense Ursaluna, which means I am going to be able to chew this Close Combat, thank God, and KO back with a Facade. Whew. Scary, scary game, for sure. But Ursaluna ended up doing what it needed to do, be really, really fat, and just be able to have that 1-for-1 trade at the end of the game like I wanted it to. So Yeah, scary match. He was able to counter team me very well with some of the trades that he made, and I had to make up for it in prep, so that's what I did. So, for the next round, I could have played either Jayvee or Zangoose. Jayvee's really fun to play because we play each other a lot. He's another Wi-Fi player, and I always beat him on Wi-Fi, but he always beats me on Showdown, hilariously enough. And Zane, which would have been a rematch of Season 2 Finals. So both of those were really exciting. Ultimately, and Jayvee won, knocking Zane out. I think at the earliest point in the tournament he's ever been knocked out before in Surge history, which is crazy because I think he's played like 4 seasons. So yeah, we're playing Jayvee for this next round, so I will show you what we brought for that. So against Jayvee, we made 2 trades. We picked up Gothitelle and Urshifu Rapid Strike. I believe we picked up Gothitelle for Slowbro and Urshifu Rapid Strike, maybe for Yuxi. I'm not entirely sure. But we kept the Tinkaton, we kept the Dragmag, we kept the Hisuian Lilligant. All of that's really good. We still had the Ursaluna, but we benched it this week. So, yeah. The reason I picked up Urshifu Rapid Strike is just because I liked the priority. I liked the pressure that it put on. Gothitelle was a bit weirder of a pick. It was kind of just like, let me upgrade into a stronger Psychic type instead of Slowbro, that had the capacity to, you know, take a hit from Gallade or potentially threaten, you know, Gastrodon to run Shed Shell or something like that. But I don't know. I was probably going to trade it after this week. Anyway, Life Orb Urshifu Rapid Strike just deals a shit ton of damage to his team. Like, the Water Resist is the Gastrodon, and he wants the Gastrodon alive for the Magnezone. So, you know, this Gastrodon is really pressured, and even, you know, Adamant close combat with Life Orb Urshifu Rapid Strike is gonna like do 70% to max defense Gastrodon. If I get a Swords Dance up, which it gets this gen, it's over. So this thing just absolutely fucking massacred him. I also liked picking up Urshifu Rapid Strike this week because Jay had a Shenpao, and the issue with the Shenpao is that it gets a lot of good moves, and by picking up, you know, Tinkaton and Urshifu, it forced kind of a 4-move slot syndrome situation where he wanted Sacred Sword for the Tinkaton and the Magnezone. He wanted Psychic Fangs to the Urshifu, which meant that he could only have dual stab, which he wanted both stabs as well. But that meant he wouldn't get priority, so he really had to choose between what moves to click with Shenpao with the trades that I made. Anyway, Protective Pat's Hisuian Lilligant is there to stop things like Static on Zapdos, Rocky Helmet on anything, and Gooey from Hisuian Goodra. We have a Screens Gothitelle. So I actually think, oh, I remember now. So the idea behind Gothitelle, someone was asking me why I picked Gothitelle yesterday, and I was like, I completely forgot. This is the reason. My initial idea was that I wanted to use Psychic Terrain Gothitelle to set up Psychic Terrain, and then Hisuian Lilligant couldn't be Ice Sharded by Shenpao because of Psychic Terrain. But I think as I kept building, I kind of just realized that screens were better. So that was nice. But this could have been a fun Psychic Terrain Gothitelle to set up and allow Hisuian Lilligant to set up. The issue is that without screens, Hisuian Lilligant has a really hard time setting up. So the idea was just to run screens. Magnezone, I can't really justify this set, to be honest. This should have been Body Press. I just wanted to be kind of like goofy, and I cooked a little bit too much. The idea behind running Light Screen here is just, again, gives me that setup potential with Hisuian Lilligant or Urshifu Rapid Strike. The Flash Cannon Volt Switch hits everything with the exception of Gastrodon and Hisuian Goodra. And my idea, which is a bad idea, don't do this, was that Body Press is doing like 20 to both of those mons anyway. So if I really want to like do something, I'll confuse them on switch in, and then it gives me a chance at a free switch. But in that world, I would just Volt Switch on the Goodra, and I don't know. Yeah, Confuse Ray was dumb. So yeah, ignore that one, folks. We also have Reflect on Tinkaton here. We have a lot of screens, maybe the most screens I've ever brought to a game, again, because I just want that setup potential. Gigaton Hammer knockoff is really all I needed for this match. I just wanted to be able to get up rocks, knock things off, go from there. And then Dragon Dance Regidrago. I think there's a non-zero chance he doesn't bring Enamorus this game. So I wanted the ability to just bring it to punish that. It forces an Amorous to come even though it doesn't have the greatest matchup. If an Amorous does come, at the very least I can trade 1-for-1 with it with Explosion. So that was the idea. So let's get into the match. I lead Tinkaton, he leads Zapdos. I should be able to take any one hit from this and get up rocks. He clicks Heat Wave and does 87%, my thing. And that shows that he's actually specs Zapdos, which is kind of wild. I'm going to go into Regidrago and dodge the Heat Wave, but since I know he's locked in, I can pretty much go for an easy Dragon Dance. If I was some kind of like non-super offensive set, I could have like been Weakness Policy with like Ice Fang or something, but I wasn't, so I just clicked Explosion and KO'd this thing. I don't mind trading 1-for-1 here because it just puts me in a situation where I no longer have to worry about an Amorous switching in as a Lilligant answer. I don't really just have to worry about it as some kind of Calm Mindset. I can just kind of, you know, kill it. Gastrodon comes in on my Tinkaton's Gigaton Hammer, and from there I'm going to be able to click Reflect on the spikes, and that's going to be potential to set up Lilligant in front of it, except that he goes into Zapdos as I knock off its choice specs. He's going to go for Heat Wave and miss, unfortunately, as I'm going to go for another knockoff, which puts Zapdos squarely in Rock's range. That's going to change its utility for Jay, as he's going to go for Heat Wave again. And I'm still kind of on the back foot, but ultimately I do think I have this game in a really solid position because Hisuian Lilligant just looks really good so long as I don't die to an Ice Shard at +1 defense. I feel like Hisuian Lilligant honestly just sweeps from this point, so I need to just make sure I'm setting that up well. Going for Aqua Jet is good. I go for Aqua Jet here and get fully paralyzed, which sucks. It would mean that he can't go into Glade like this, but because I am paralyzed, he can. I go for Aqua Jet thinking that I'm just going to get some damage off before I die, but then he goes for Reflect, and I'm like, oh man, what is he cooking? And I'm going to go for Aqua Jet again. He's going to get the Storm Drain. I should have gone for like CC or something, but ultimately I don't think it makes a huge difference. Is he's going to go for Ice Beam here instead of Earth Power. I'm going to go for Close Combat again. It's not going to pick up the KO. I'm going to die to Helmet, and then he's going to be able to click Recover. But I don't hate this because it allows me to go into Lilligant and start forcing pressure. And I could have gone for the other thing, the Victory Dance, but because I didn't have Reflect Up on my side, Ice Beam and Ice Shard would have KO'd me regardless, so I didn't want to do that. I wanted to preserve my health as much as humanly possible. So I'm going to go into Mag Zone on the Ice Spinner, and this reveals to me that he's banded Shinpao, which is actually really good for me, as I'm going to go for Volt Switch. The reason it's good for me is because there's not one move that he can necessarily lock into. Like, he can lock in a Crunch, potentially, but that gives Hisuian Lilligant the setup opportunity, so I like that. He's going to into Shinpao again. Now, he has to face the reality of KOing me with Crunch, or taking whatever this cost tell is. He chooses to KO me with Crunch, and this is going to give me that setup opportunity with Hisuian Lilligant. And it's going to force him in a situation where he can't click Ice Shard because he's locked into Crunch. So I win the game so long as I can land the hustle, because he can click Crunch here. I'm going to live and set up a Victory Dance, and he can go into Hisuian Gudra, but it'll die. And then if he goes in this Ice Shard, Magnezone's going to take the hit and then KO it back. So he has to hope for a miss here. I don't miss here, and I always KO this Hisuian Gudra with Close Combat. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to finally miss over the course of the season. Finally, I get the miss, which is completely deserved. I landed way too many hustle boosted moves throughout this tournament. Makes sense that I get taken out by it. Because I don't have Body Press, I can't really 1v1 this thing. I honestly don't think I would have been able to even if I had Body Press, because he also had Body Press and I had a lower HP. Either way, that's how we end up getting out in the league. Me and Jay played this game in call, and it was really fun, so good game to him. Ultimately, he did end up going out next round, but the person who ended up winning the tournament overall was Rob, our week 5 opponent with the Scream Tail that was you know, a good player. So I'm really glad that he ended up winning the league. Good representative for Surge, and I'm really happy that I was his only loss, so that was cool. But yeah, stay tuned maybe to more stuff on the channel. Maybe, I don't know. it's possible. It's also possible I just don't upload again. Who knows? But I hope you enjoyed the movie. And yeah, all right, see you all around.